Today we're going to be looking at the exhibition I Do, Wedding Fashions 1749 to 1975. Okay, this is Dr. Ordonez.
Hi.
And she's going to tell us a little bit about the exhibition which she and her graduate students put together.
And it's about wedding fashions, as you saw in the heading there, the label for the exhibition. And the earliest wedding dress we have is 1801. The earlier 18th century things we'll look at the end. And so the Empire style dresses with a high waistline, vertical silhouette is what you see here. Made out of white cotton, not white because it's a wedding dress, but white because that was the fashion of the time. And the cotton is also fashion of the time, which meant that silk weavers sometimes went hungry, or their children went hungry. So as the 19th century continued, we have other wedding dresses. It was not fashionable to have white wedding dresses yet, so we see a green damask fabric here in this dress, which it dates actually 1840s, and it was a wedding, and I thought it told the place, but it doesn't tell the place. Typical 1840s, with the line going out toward the shoulders from and a little point in center front. The dresses were still closing in the back at that point.
It has a little cape that goes with it.
And the little cape is right, yes, it's right there above it. Behind it is a shawl that is a damask weave, and it was a wedding shawl that someone wore.
Over one of those large skirted dresses.
I was looking for the label for the shawl, which I don't. Oh, it's right here. That's this shawl. I don't know where the label is for that shawl. Dr. Walters will have to find out what the name of that shawl is, and she can tell you. We didn't put in our 1850s wedding dress because of the space, but this is an 1860s. And by the 1860s, as you probably know, the silhouette became asymmetrical. And there's a hoop under here, but it's an asymmetrical hoop. It's flatter in front and sticks out toward the back. And so this has a fairly long train to it, and a little bit of poofiness in the back side.
So we're moving towards the bustle.
You can see it coming. Also the swags in front, the apron effects in front that are in tiers there, could easily be a Charles Frederick Worth influence, because we see that again for a number of decades, having some kind of apron or swag in the front of the dresses. And it has bows and poofs in the back. Of course, a wedding dress can be fancier than a day dress, as you'd expect. By the 70s, and this, well, we don't have a 70s, this is 80s, but by the 70s, the arm's eye has moved up to its normal position, and so by the 1880s, as we see here, the arm's eye is up to its normal position. Starting in the 50s, women's dresses started opening in the front, so buttons become part of women's history. And this has beautiful buttons on it. Women didn't have buttons on their clothes unless they were man-tailored riding outfits or something like that until the 50s. And so by the 70s we see, and 80s, we see lots of fancy buttons. This is also a period in which in the 80s, 70s and 80s, women tend to put a lot of decoration on their clothes, and so we have ruffles, self-fabric ruffles, in a shirred effect, S-H-I-R-R-E-D, shirred effect up here, but then a different little tab thing on the sleeve with pleating, and then pleating down the sides. This is actually probably a mild version of what some of those dresses that have too much gewgaw on them. And this was a little bridesmaid's dress that's up here, that's hanging up here. That's a very sheer fabric with a blue petticoat underneath it. And that's the one that's 1870s. I've got to find out where the labels are for the shawls. Maybe they didn't get up. This is a good check.
Do I have a big sleeve here on the end?
By the after mid-century, brides began wearing white for weddings because the English royal family was wearing white. In this exhibition, the first white wedding dress was the 60s, and here's one at the end of the century that's white, and it has the big leg of mutton sleeve and a rounded hip line that the bustle is gone. There's a little bit of fullness, as you'll see in a minute, on the back side in the back, but it's a very nice rounded hip line that drapes downward. This one, of course, then, because the skirt doesn't offer a lot of detail, this one has a lot of detail at the beginning, at the top. And then here's a picture, if you want to see, of the bride wearing that dress. And so we tried to mimic how that collar poofed out around her. And then those shoes that are right down there too are the shoes that she wore. And this date was 1893. By the end of the decade, the shoes sometimes are really pointed, needle points on the shoes.
Let's go on to the back
And the
look at
side.
the bustle.
And so
The
it,
lack of a bustle, actually.
yeah, it's padded out. Actually, it's early 90s, so,
Still a little emphasis there.
oh, now I remember. Here's the information on the shawl that's right here. It's 1864 for the shawl that was behind that wedding dress. And it's red on one side and white on the other. So she wore it on the white side out for her wedding, and then her diary reported that she wore it the red side out for parties afterwards.
Okay. Right, so going into the second gallery here, we go to the 20th century, so this material you're very familiar with.
And this is starting 1904, and it's a monobosom that has the high collar, and it's not a leg of mutton sleeve, but it is a sleeve that has upper fullness to it than a seam. And this is an S-shaped figure. Is that what you call it in class?
S-shaped silhouette.
And so the monobosom sticks out in front and the rear end sticks out in the back to create that S-shaped figure. And if you'll try standing up and walking with your rear end stuck out in one direction and your bust in the other, you find out that you have to take little bitty short steps. And so
This is her
that
wedding
happens
photo
to be
also?
green, but some women did wear, most women wore white in that first century. But maybe somebody couldn't afford a white dress or was being practical and decided they wanted to have a dress that they could wear again later. And white wedding dresses are hard to wear again later. And the hats for real.
Both of these hats are
wedding
huge.
hats, yes, both of those are first decade hats that were popular with the feathers. And some shoes
Those are from the second dress, right?
from the teens. And so that they're not quite as pointed as some of the 1900 shoes were. And then we have two 20s dresses worn at a 1926 wedding. It happened to be in Canada, but they're very typical of the 20s sheer silk crepe fabrics. Crepe, almost a chiffon, maybe a little bit heavier than a chiffon, with a dropped waistline. The petticoat line shows through. These are the petticoats that came with these dresses. So there was very light fabric.
Is this the bridesmaids?
The bridesmaids is the yellow one, and the
Oh,
brides.
okay. The bride is a sort of off-white towards gray.
Well, yes, it has maybe aged a little bit. and is not in very good condition. So I'll tell you.
That's why it's in the back.
I'm telling you a secret here. The reason it's in the back is because we had to stabilize the middle silk ribbons there that were not in very good condition. So we put it toward the back. These two dress forms that these dresses are on are actually 1920s dress forms. So this was the shape of the
bodies, the ideal body at that time.
And these dresses don't fit on any other kind of dress form. They don't look right on a 1950s dress form that has boobs. So these are our 20s.
Okay, so going to this is an interesting dress because 3 different sisters wore it, right?
That's right.
This is 40s, so you see the sweetheart neckline. I want you to notice that.
And it's a machine-made lace, and that was popular to have lace dresses. Well, actually, Queen Victoria in 1840 wore
37 or 40.
whatever. But yeah, when she got married, had lace, and so lace has always been popular.
So these are the 3 different brides that wore this dress. They're all very beautiful and glamorous, aren't they?
You wouldn't know it's not just 3 poses of the same person. And so that was
1940.
1935,
actually-
37, and 39.
Okay, so late 30s. All right.
So it
Actually,
started out
Chanel
with-
started doing those lace dresses. That's good. Okay.
with a narrow sleeve with the little buttons
Mhm.
and the point of the sleeve that goes over the hand. We still see people using that style on wedding dresses today. And so this is then 40s, 1940s, and the date was 1940. So the United States wasn't involved in the war yet, but certainly being cognizant of the war going on in Europe. And during the 40s, the first part of the 40s and during the war years, it was not unusual for men to wear their uniforms. So wedding pictures have men in uniforms and the women sometimes in wedding dresses and sometimes in street dresses. She could have worn this dress again later.
This is actually a dress with a coat on top
That's
of it.
right,
Yeah.
it is.
And then it has these little puff things at the sleeves to make even though this is a fairly lightweight fabric, it makes the sleeves stand out so it looks like you have bigger shoulders.
And it has shoulder pads.
Mhm.
The
Yes.
shoulders are squared off by this time, and the lengths are shorter. They get shorter. And then this is the turban hat that she wore with that dress. And then there's a pair of shoes not hers, but of the same period that are rather fancy. Satin-covered shoes.
Now going to this
The
dress.
1950s dress with a waistline and the bodice opens down the front with darts that I grew up calling shirt waist. You may have learned it as a shirt
I
dress.
think our book calls it a shirt dress.
And so
It has buttons down the front.
lots of little buttons down the front, and poofy little sleeves. What's most typical, besides the fact that it opens down the front and has a normal waistline there, is the very poofy skirt. And
This is because of Dior's new look that exaggerated the fullness of the skirt after the restrictions of the war years. So what year did this bride get married?
this is 52.
52, okay.
And this I've always been interested, Dr. Welters, in that this is exactly 100 years later from having had very, very full skirts
Right.
that in the 1850s. And
Well, that was a theory that Agnes Young came up with in her cyclical aspects of fashion, and like every 30 years there'd be a new silhouette, but after women started wearing pants, that kind of broke down.
Oh, it did. The modern years don't fit any of those anymore. But she would have maybe worn a hoop, but at least a lot of
Yes.
petticoats. Possibly a hoop. I had party dresses with hoops during that time.
We don't want to admit how old we are, though.
Oh, well, I did. Oh, and the little cap with the veil goes with that dress.
Okay. Getting kind of familiar here.
This
Then we
is-
have some 60s.
This is 60s, and this is a very typical 60s. My sister made her own dress. It's not unusual for the brides to be making, brides or brides' mothers to make their dresses. She had a dress very much like this. Lace appliques on taffeta are very typical of the 60s. And so that's what you see here is the lace applique. And this date, all we know for this one is that it is a 60s wedding.
It's probably earlier 60s, I think.
And so, and it's white. In fact, as you'll notice, all of these later ones are white. Although brides could still choose to be practical and wear something that was not white that they could wear again later. And would have had some petticoats underneath this, but nothing like the 50s. And then the last of the wedding dresses that we have here is the 1975 polyester. So the one before was acetate, and then this is polyester, and it's a
Sort of romanticized, nostalgic.
Yeah, we have a lot of ethnic influences showing up in the first part of the 70s, and so it's a perfect 70s dress. Fiber content as well as the design with the lace in the sleeves, and not much petticoat probably under it. This is women's lib and more, and we didn't have more, it didn't stand out as much at this point.
Do you want to go over to the 18th century?
Sure, we'll start at the oldest one here. Do we have to show this other one? I can't hear. Yeah. This petticoat is in our collection, and it's 1763, and the bride supposedly embroidered this, and her overskirt would have exposed this bottom part of her skirt, and all the way around, if you read what she embroidered on, it says, "A man of words and not of deeds is like a garden full of weeds." So she's being very philosophical.
I hope she got a good garden.
Well, I hope so too. I hope she chose well. And here's her name, Mary Bullock. And the date, she got married in Barrington and on May 1st, 1763. And we have the petticoat that shows up here, and I don't know whether there's going to be glare on it or not,
Yeah,
but it's not in very good condition, so we didn't put the petticoat out, but it has, maybe you call this stippling, the very close quilting stitches here. The other one was embroidered, this one is quilted, and it has little designs in it, and we have a list of them so somebody can look for and see if they can find some of the people that are, there's a mermaid, there are sea animals right in here below that hole, or some sea animals. There's a chariot that's being drawn by a sea creature. The chariot's on the seam right there.
Well, these look
but
like
you
the
can
ones
see.
that we documented from the Warwick area at the Rhode Island Historical Society.
And so it had wool, it's silk, but it had wool in it, and so there's a lot of insect damage because the insects like the wool.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Ordonez.